I'm going to call to order this meeting. This meeting's being recorded by the Economic Development Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. In accordance with open meeting law, when a counselor is attending remotely, the chair needs to acknowledge members of the council are appearing remotely, and all roll call will be taken for all votes. Which we don't have, Counselor Minhas is not online, so I'm gonna do roll call. Counselor Garrett.
Present.
Counselor Gordon is not in attendance. Counselor Healy.
Here.
Counselor Minhas. Nope. And I am here. I need a motion to approve the minutes from October 8th and November 7th, 2024.
So moved. Second.
Since we are all here, all in favor? Aye. And we'll start public comment. I will just do the caveat that if our planning board member arrives, I'm going to pause. I'll wait for the person who's speaking to finish, and then we'll pause public comment and move to the public. Actually, we'll complete public comment. Sorry, we're going to complete public comment before we go to the hearing. This is the hearing. And if you're online and you would like to give public comment, you can put your name and address in the chat box and we will come to you. Chris Ethier.
Here.
Would you like to speak now?
And what I'd like to hear the issues we're speaking on.
So we have well, you can speak about anything. We will listen to you talk for 2 minutes about whatever you want right now. The issues that are on our agenda that you might want to speak to are 4 zoning issues. One is related to the semi-residential district. One is related to multifamily dwellings. One is related to mixed residential business uses, and one is related to the central commercial district. So if you want to speak to the zoning, you're welcome to. And if you want to just.
I'm unaware of a couple of them. I'm aware of a few of those.
Okay. And just for, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Proceed here. I live at 26 Sunrise Ave in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Obviously, I'm a long-term resident. I was born here. Anyway, in looking at some of the major things you're looking at this evening, I'm not sure how you're even having a vote on not allowing a special permit to be enacted for large scale residential units. Without question, they affect everybody in the area they're put in. Without question, they affect property values, which is a side issue for sure. Without question, they are an impact in the area they are put in. And it's, I recognize why the special permits were put in place to begin with. They were put in so that people could come and before you and before other boards, be able to get answers, get a little remediation, be able to understand what was happening, have a maybe a little bit of something come out of it that they were more happy with, and to take and eliminate the number of units you can put in. I mean, if somebody walked into Greenfield and said, I want to put 5,000 units into Greenfield, and this thing passes, there wouldn't even be talk about it. There wouldn't be anybody who could say anything outside about it. That's what some of these things you're talking about are. I mean, that's ridiculous. Beyond that, getting rid of having special permits means that you don't have the impact or the ability to go in and sit as I am here right now, or you, all of us, be able to say anything about a lot of what is going to happen. I'm not even sure why I'm here. I can't believe that would even pass. I've been in your seats too many times. I've sat on these tables on your side. I don't get it. But I know I all sent each and every one of you a missive today of my discontent with the thought patterns that brings in. And that's enough. And thank you very much for your time
Thank
and
you.
your energy and your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise Leonard. Oh, okay. I just want to acknowledge Counselor Minhas. Did you enter?
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the
Oh.
chat.
Okay.
Yep, there's two of them.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge that I think Counselor Minhas is present. Counselor Minhas, can you just confirm you can hear us and you're able to speak?
Yes.
Great,
Yes.
thank you.
Councilor Bullock, could I make a point of clarification for folks?
What I would appreciate is if we just take public comment, you can make note of clarifications and then we'll address those at the end. Because I think I want to talk about process a little bit as well.
My name is Denise Leonard. I live at 389 Adams Road, and I'm here as part of the Agricultural Commission to make comments on the rooster ordinance. We are newly reformed and available to help with these sorts of things that deal with agricultural issues in the city. That's it.
Oh, thank you, great.
you.
I'm gonna move us online to the first, is it just Stephanie on there?
Stephanie and somebody whose last name is Gibo.
Okay, we'll take Stephanie Duclos first. If you're ready, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you for letting us speak tonight. Stephanie Duclos, Chapman Street, Greenfield. I'm a hard no on a lot of this, all proposed. I do have some questions about legality of changing ordinances to accommodate people who are violating ordinances. So I sent an email asking for a legal opinion on some of that stuff. I just wanted to note that impact statements, neighborhood impact statements and statements from public safety are so imperative as to getting projects done, especially, things like watershed and storm runoff and conservation. Those are and historical, especially downtown. Those are very important aspects of putting these projects in. And I think that sometimes they're not always looked at thoroughly before projects go through. So I would ask that you vote no on all of these new proposals until we get more definitions from the state that we can tighten up our language. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. Elizabeth Nett.
Yes, I think I will. I'm Elizabeth Nett. I'm part of the Agricultural Commission, newly formed. I've lived in Greenfield for about 5 years. I'm not a city girl. So I'm learning a lot about the city and cities and how things work in them, as opposed to towns like Huntington, Massachusetts, and towns like that. So we have an ordinance in Greenfield for chicken keeping. It's clear, it's clean, it's concise, and comma, in my opinion, comma, this ordinance works for a lot of Greenfield because I've seen Greenfield grow in the 5.5 years I've been here. Most people that keep chickens here, in my opinion, would not want a rooster and would want hens. Now we're talking about roosters. Our ordinance says in Greenfield, anyone who has less than 5 acres, you know this ordinance, you can have up to 10 hens, not poultry, not fowl, hens. That's very specific. Chickens. If you said fowl or poultry, you'd be going into all kinds of breeds that you don't even really want to go there, okay? And look at, I'm a farmer. So, and so when you are getting chickens, when they're babies, you know, you're probably going to get a rooster. Okay. So part of my job, I think looking at this nice, clear, clean ordinance is to help people, to support them, to educate them in, hey, when you get your chickens in the spring, hypothetically, right? This is when we usually get them. And one of them starts crowing, you know, get a hold of us. So let us come over. Let's make sure it's a rooster. In the meantime, finding ways to not have that rooster living with you in a postage stamp neighborhood. It's against the ordinance. Okay, so that's kind of how my thinking is. I know that a lot of people don't like these special permit variances. I understand that. But I think that gives a person an opportunity to make a direct complaint to a department, be it the health department or the zoning department, use that special permitting variance process. So when I read this ordinance, I went, what? I mean, that's really how I looked at it, because I felt comfortable and I felt that we had the opportunity to offer our citizens to come in and to speak to the board, the special permitting zoning board. So that's basically what I have to say about this. I think that what we've got is a good fit for this city that's growing. I mean, I really do. And I think we have opportunities. And with the Agricultural Commission here, we're here to help you. Whatever you need to do with that rooster, rather than get into a lot of trouble. This is if you have less than 5. If you have 5 acres or more, the right to farm covers you. Yay. Okay,
Thank you so much. Was there someone else online?
Yeah.
Yes, Lisa Gilbo.
Lisa Gilbo, you may go.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, for hearing me. I just want to concur with Stephanie and Chris Ethier. I'm asking you to vote no on the Stone Lane Farm project. I just don't believe that it's the right place or location for something like this. I think that there needs to be a impact study done, a feasibility study. And, my concern is it changes our property values. And it changes the whole nature of the neighborhood. It's a quiet area. It's one of the nicest neighborhoods in Greenfield. I moved to this area because of this neighborhood, and this project is going to change the whole dynamic of that neighborhood. I'm also concerned about wetlands, and think there needs to be a study done on that as well. So I hope you will take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anyone else online who wants to speak, you can put your name and address in the chat and we will come back to you. Joan Marie Jackson.
Evening. I'm Jo Marie Jackson, 2 Chestnut Hill. I'd like to say a few things about the multifamily zoning on apartment buildings. The first point is to keep special permits for large multifamily dwellings or apartment buildings, not by right. Planning Board has recommended you, quote, consider a unit threshold to allow multifamily dwellings by right in the semi-rural zoning district, unquote. I ask you, and I spoke with Mitchell Spade, I spoke with Al Norman and a few other constituents. We ask you to allow up to 24 apartments per total project by right in the SR zone, semi-residential zone, and for 25 and above by special permit. In all other residential districts, the special permit should remain as written in current zoning. Our current zoning also requires that any multifamily dwellings 50 or above must have a major development review, or MDR, which requires a special permit. Now, my second point is to keep apartment buildings in residential zones outside the central commercial district at the current 35-foot height limit. And these are some reasonable things to ask of the Economic Development Committee. And it would also work with the integrity of the character of Greenfield, as we all enjoy living here. So we hope you take this into consideration.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mitchell Spade.
Mitchell Spate, 2 Chestnut Hill. I've spoken on this matter for several months now, you guys. And as I said before, it seems like it's falling on deaf ears. And it seems as though that you are trying to relinquish our rights here. It's not fear that we have, it's knowing. Someone mentioned about being a city person. I've had the privilege and opportunity to live in the suburbs as well as live in a city, the big city known as Manhattan, which comes with all the luxuries of living in an urban area. Greenfield does not afford that. I have asked you in the past, what is fueling this? You keep presenting only landlord-tenant situations. That's not healthy for this community. Are the developers strictly groups such as HPN? Are the financiers only people such as Blue Hub Capital? Look them up. I think you're setting Greenfield up for failure. Right now, you have a developer downtown known as Community Builders. Have you done your research? I think that you will see that there's a present lawsuit against them in East Hampton. We're not here to contest you all the time. We're here to try to create some harmony and balance that's beneficial and takes in the uppermost interest of all constituents here in the city of Greenfield. People are moving here to be property owners. And there's many ways to be property owners. Talk to you about legal structure. That has not been presented yet. I think you should give this serious thought. Again, right now we're heading down a road that I don't think it's in the best interest of Greenfield. So if you guys want to come to the table and speak rational about it, bring Ed, as I said before, I welcome the opportunity. But right now you keep pushing a matter that doesn't work for the constituents here. And I think there's going to be some pushback, I hate to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Singer had his hand up, but now it's down.
Oh, David Singer, did you want to speak? This is public comment, not public hearing. So if you want to speak about roosters, you can wait or you can go now.
No, I'm not going to crow about that.
Thank you.
No, I'm here again to talk about the cap on multifamilies. I'm going to speak both as a citizen and on the zoning board. If you don't put a cap, like major development review is the limit before something happens, but that's a pretty deep arena. it's got to be something in between allowed and major development review. So I'm going to say, I like Joan's suggestion of 24 in the semi-residential. I think that's what she said. I can't see you, Joan, if you're nodding. Is she nodding?
Yes, I'm nodding.
That she said that. I think semi-residential to go from, 3 units before a special permit to infinity or to 50 is a pretty big jump. So I think 24 is a good number. That's what it is now, but for each unit on a site, this way it's limited to 24 for 1 unit. And in central commercial, if you want to bring it up to maybe 35, that would be fine. And then the rest of the community, just leave it as it is, see what happens, I think the zoning board would be hard pressed to decide each case on a case-by-case basis without the legislation giving us a number. How do I decide this case and this other case? A lot of factors have to be considered. So this way, if you set limits, which I think, there's been a lot of feedback, you've received a lot of feedback, and it wouldn't necessarily run against your grain if you did the 24 and the 35. So I'm hopeful that you'll hear that. I know the council's up for, I saw that you had motions on tonight, so I wanted to encourage you, if you're going to think of what I'm saying, consider what I'm saying, then put it in the motions tonight. I didn't want to wait till January or the meeting, because now's the time to do the good work. So thank you very much. Thanks for considering me. And I don't see.
I found that.
Holidays, everybody.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
It's
It's at max volume, but this meeting is,
I'm just saying here, I had very difficulty hearing.
yeah, it's hard to hear. I will just say the meeting is being recorded, so if anyone does want to go back and listen to comments at a better volume.
Could I ask,
It's hard to hear.
did you hit his high points? Just quickly?
He believes that there should be a cap on, multifamilies that we should put in, I think it was around 35 was what he said. So triggers a special permit. And that,
You agree with 24?
For central commercial, 35, or semi-residential, 24. The rest, keep it the way it is.
right, central commercial 35, semi-residential 24, and the rest keep it the way it is.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else online or in person who would like to speak about just public comment? You can speak about whatever you want.
Yes, I'd like to say one more thing.
Yes.
This is Lisa Gilbo. The Stone Farm Lane project is considering putting a 30-unit, 1 building on 1 acre lot right behind a residential homes. I think that the building itself is too big, and I think it's too much for 1 acre. Please take that into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, before we move into our public hearing, I want to give a couple clarifying comments. One is that I got some emails from some of you that are in the room today, and some of what you're speaking on. When we get to reading the motions portion of tonight, I'll do a little explainer, and I'll ask Counselor Garrett to do a probably better explainer of what is changing, because these are current ordinances that are changing. So there's some things that were said tonight that I just want to clarify, because understanding and reading zoning law isn't easy. I'm not an expert. I've had to ask too many people over the last 6 months, and ask for legal opinions and talk to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities and the Governor's Office. So it's not something you can, like, it's not something I can just read and digest, and understand what the meaning is. So for all of these, all of these zoning amendments that were just spoken about in public comment, I just want to clarify that, like, if someone wanted to come in and build a 5,000 unit building, like was spoken about, that would not be allowed without a special permit, period, but especially would not be allowed because these changes are happening. The lot size, the setback, the building code, all of that is still in place. So you can't come in and take a postage stamp piece of land and plop a building that fills that piece of land up and put as many units as you want in. If you wanted to put a 5,000 unit building in, or even let's just say if you wanted to put a 100 unit building in, you would have to abide by the setbacks, which are significant. You'd have to have the appropriate amount of frontage to put that building there. And then because that building is so large, you would need a major development review and a special permit. So I just want to clarify that if you've read this legislation, if you've read these motions and you're having a hard time digesting what they're meaning, they're not opening the door for like anyone to build anything of any size on any lot. That's not what they're doing. And some of you who wrote to me, I wrote back to you. I will talk to you about these more after the meeting because we can't have dialogue in a meeting. But I also just want to clarify where we're at with these. So we are not at a point where a vote is being taken on these. Tonight, what we will do is we will discuss these among our committee members, and then we will make a recommendation that goes to the council, and the council will then do the same process. So you can come to council on the 18th. You can give public comment. You can also write to your counselors or speak to them between now and the 18th. And then the council will be tasked with voting on the 18th. So the full city council is who actually votes on these. I just want to quell any fears that like a vote is being taken tonight that's binding. And that's not what's happening. We're a committee and we make a recommendation to the full council. And I'll allow you, if you have any other points of clarity that you just, the one other point of clarity is we are not the body who would do anything about a specific project. So if you're worried about a specific project, like one of the public commenters was, we are not the body that would furnish special permits, or notify abutters, or any of that. So I just want folks to understand that that's not the purview of the city council. And I'll let you clarify and then we'll move to public hearing.
You did most of what I was going to clarify. The only other thing I wanted to mention is regarding the unit limit ordinance change, potential ordinance change. There was a hard cap of 24 units in the current language. That's what exists in the city for new construction. So even with a special permit, even with a major development review, right now, under the current zoning ordinance, it's impossible to build new construction anywhere in the city that's more than 24 units. So that's a big reason this is on the table, is because, again, it's a hard cap, no appeal. It doesn't matter what the community thinks. If all the neighbors want 5,000 units, it couldn't happen because we have this hard cap. So I just want to add that little bit of clarification as well.
Excuse me, is that just into what you're trying to move it into is the special?
It's semi-residential.
Semi-residential.
So that's a different ordinance, which we'll discuss in a minute, but basically, just because I am speaking, there was a suggestion from.
Speaking of it everywhere.
Yes, so this is the whole city. You can't have more than 24 units right now, period, in new construction. Wilson's, for example, that project could have more because it's a pre-existing building and it's separately designed in the ordinance to allow more units than that. So, yep.
Okay, so unless there is anyone else who has not spoken who would like to speak for public comment, we will move into the public hearing. Let me just get to the right paper here, sorry. And so I am going to open do you have to vote? Do you have to roll call your people in before I read it?
We should, yeah, just we should introduce ourselves, sure.
Okay.
And I do want to thank you, Mayor, Council Bullock. And I do want to say on behalf of the planning board that there's been such a flurry of zoning amendments that we didn't hear about this hearing until today. And so I very much respect that all the available planning board members have scrambled to be available here. And I appreciate, Victor, you rushing over because I got your message, Jeff. You thought it was 6:30. So trying to get someone there in person. And Sarah is on temporary leave. So all the planning board members were able to manage to get here. So yeah, I'm George Palumpsis, and I'm the planning board chair. And Peter, you're on here. Why don't I call on you, and then the ones that are there in person.
Good evening, Peter McIver, planning board member.
Thank you. Both of you there could introduce
Jeff
yourselves.
Sauser, Jeff Sauser, Vice Chair. Victor Michelle, Clerk. Planning.
Thank you.
Great. And, okay, I'm gonna open this and then we will have discussion. So order number FY 25-024. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield, this is 28, sorry. In accordance with home rule charter, the Economic Development Committee and Planning Board will hold a joint hearing Tuesday, December 10th at 6 p.m. To consider the proposed citizens petition zoning amendment to regulate the number of chickens and roosters within the RA, RB, and RC zoning districts. The proposed amendments can be viewed online, or I have a copy of them if you would like to see it. And I am going to open this public hearing at 6:37 p.m. And we have a list of, if you are online and you want to speak about the public hearing related to chickens and roosters, you can put your name and address in the chat. I will call Dennis Leonard. Denise, I'm sorry.
Do you want to read?
Sure, I can read the proposed amendment as long as yeah, you want to read it for me? I have a million papers here.
Okay, so this is the proposed amendment. The RB district, which is suburban residential, and the RA urban residential districts would have no allowance for roosters, no matter the acres. Limited chickens would be allowed, parentheses 10, in the rural residential would allow chickens and limited roosters on land 5 acres in size.
Denise, yes, you can speak if you.
So, that's in direct conflict with Massachusetts 48 section. Cannot change zoning laws. If there's an issue with chickens or rooster, maybe that should be brought to the Board of Health, because they should be dealing with noise issues. But you also have to realize that when you've got a farm and Massachusetts state has defined this as being 5 acres or more, you cannot regulate some of those things if they're normal family practices. Various things in terms of, as Elizabeth said, even if you buy all female chicks, they don't sex them very well. So you're gonna get 1 or 2 roosters. I've been very lucky in the last few years not to get any, but I co-bought with a friend of mine and 2 of his were roosters. The other thing is, if you want to raise chickens for meat, they're all straight run, which means they're males and females. They're usually slaughtered somewhere between 6 and 12 weeks of age, and they will start growing for that. That's it for right now.
Thank
I
you.
do have, I did talk to Matt Plum about this, so I have some of the things. And there is, I don't know if you want this or not, but there's, they have information on should your border health regulate livestock. I don't know if you'd like to see this.
I'd love to see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then this is the Mass General law that states you can't change the zoning.
Excuse me, Counselor Bullock.
Yes.
If someone in person wants to speak, it would help if they come up near the mic. to be able to
Oh,
hear
okay,
them.
yeah.
Thank you.
I will, that's okay. I will ask anyone else that wants to speak to just come up so you're close to the microphone. And we only have a few more people on this issue, so I will hold the update that I had till the end. Pete Regari.
One more thing,
Oh, yep.
female chickens can decide to crow at some point or another.
I said, yeah.
Had it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And Pete Regari.
Pete Regari, 152 Highland Ave. And the idea of allowing roosters just wherever you want and whenever you want, it just doesn't work. I have a neighbor next door who has a rooster, and it's okay this time of the year. But boy, in the summertime, it's really obnoxious. And it just doesn't, they just don't belong in those situations.
You can't, I'm sorry, you can't interrupt. You can't interrupt each other, sorry.
Yeah, so I think that where you've got house after house at neighborhoods, it just doesn't make sense to me. So hopefully they'll change that or restrict the roosters, is what I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. Oscar Totolo.
Yeah, but they're talking about allowing anymore.
Can't speak when other people are speaking. Thank you. David Moscaritolo, 43 Country Club Road. I'm the one that wrote the amendment. It's been a year and a half that my wife and I have been woken up at all times in the early mornings, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the AM. My neighbor on Davis Street has 2 parcels of land. His house is registered with the city on 3.9 acres of land, which falls under the 5 acres. His church is registered as 8 acres. Actually, I don't even think the assessor can find that. It's a little bit confusing. My question is why isn't he being held to the 5 acre law? The planning board says, the planning department says, no, you have to account for all the acreage, but the house is registered for under 5 acres. Having 5 or more acres, you might be allowed to have roosters, but doesn't allow you to not respect your neighbors and not be kind to your neighbors. And I don't know if I agree with state farming. Yes, you're allowed to have a farm, but there could be some stipulations in that. Well, I mean, what is the point of letting somebody have a rooster if they have 5 acres when they put their coop on your line 100 yards from your bedroom window? So yeah, it's great that they can have 5 acres of land, but where is the safety? We live in a dense populated area. We don't live out in the farming district. There's no farms in this neighbor is not a farm. They're not registered as a farm. They're a church and a house. They're not a farm. They've just adopted chickens from one of their parishioners because their parishioner had roosters illegally in a home that had less than 5 acres. So they took them in, and now the neighborhood and we have to live with them just because they felt like they were doing a good deed. Well, I don't think they were doing a great deed for the neighborhood. I've talked to my neighbors several times. I've tried to be nice. There's no need for roosters in a residential area, no matter how much land you have. If you're a farm and you're producing money and that you're living, great, that's understandable. But just to put them wherever you want, is not fair for the neighborhood. I don't think, it's great that you can state all these laws, but until you're woken up every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, then it's a different story. And people need to understand that, like, laws are great, but if you don't have something within that law saying, oh yeah, you have 5 acres, you can do it, but you can't have it 2 acres next to your neighbor or some type of, detail, then, it just doesn't make any sense in my mind. I mean, I'm trying to be reasonable. I'm not asking to change the world. I think it's, if this doesn't work, maybe I do go to the Board of Health. Maybe maybe I consider it's a sound thing. Maybe it's an ordinance with noise. But I think it's really unfair that just somebody can just say, oh, I have a farm and I'm going to do whatever I want, because it's not a farm. It's a church and a home. And really, thank you for your time. I know there's a lot of other important things, but this is important, I think, to a lot of people in the community. There's a lot of roosters out there and people are afraid to come and talk about them because they're afraid that their neighbor is going to retaliate. There is a lot of illegal roosters in Greenfield. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this public hearing? I can't take second rounds. I know it's really hard to not speak back to people, but that's like the format for this.
Sorry.
I'm
sorry. I've got to say,
I can give you 1 more minute because you had a minute left on your time, but we can't. We
cannot change the zoning ordinance, and the current ordinance states no roosters on plots under 5 acres. This particular issue does need to go someplace else rather than changing the ordinance. And maybe the Board of Health gets involved.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who has not spoken who would like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone online? Okay. I am going to close this public hearing at 6:47 p.m. I am going to say 2 things and then I will open it to discussion to the 2 boards here. The first is that I've done some deep digging on this issue, the issue of roosters, and I say this as someone who is a chicken owner and who has a rooster problem in my neighborhood. And so I see both sides of this issue. But we did not receive a legal opinion from our town solicitor on this, but there is legal opinions from other towns. So the mayor will decide if it's worth it for us to get our own opinion. I don't do that. But this petition would be in conflict with the state right to farm law. That being said, what we have adopted into our current code has a resolution of dispute, and specifically for this issue. And so I understand there's some semantics here about like what does a farm mean? And in reading about farming or agriculture or their derivatives in our current code, anybody who is farming on their land or engaged in agricultural, aquacultural, floricultural, horticultural, composting, growing, harvesting, forest products, land, forestry, lumbering, operations, raising livestock, including horses, chickens, like all of these things, that is farming. You don't have to register as a farm. That's how our code is written. And so what we are obligated to do, our duty as a board, is to follow the rules and the laws of the town of Greenfield. The resolution of disputes says any person who seeks to complain about the operation of a farm may, notwithstanding pursuing any other available remedy, file a grievance with the mayor or his or her designee. The filing of the grievance does not suspend the time within which to pursue any other available remedies that the aggrieved may have. The mayor or his or her designee shall forward a copy of the grievance to the appropriate town authorities, including but not limited to the Board of Health, the Zoning Board of Appeals. The mayor or his or her designee shall also forward a copy of the grievance to the Agricultural Commission or its agent, which shall review and facilitate the resolution of the grievance and report its recommendation within an agreed upon time frame. So my recommendation would be that a formal complaint is filed with the Agricultural Commission and the mayor, and that a resolution is attempted through those departments. And I'm going to say this, that I agree with a lot of what you said, David, that my hope is that neighbors will be good neighbors to each other. And at times those relations get tense sometimes. And so potentially the Agricultural Commission or another body of the city, the executive office, et cetera, stepping in to help negotiate movement of the coop or whatever the resolution may be, could potentially remedy this situation. Otherwise, the only other way for us as a body to do anything for you related to this would be for us to change this code, which is a much bigger, longer process that is probably not worth the fight because it would be changing state, amending state code that we've adopted. That is all I have to say on this issue. Does anyone on EDC or planning?
Hi, Council Bullock. I wanted to say the planning board is here for the public hearing, of course, but we did not have an intention to deliberate tonight. This is going to be on the next planning board agenda on January 2nd. So I think it would be time for the planning board members to take their leave and adjourn our portion of the meeting. And I really appreciate planning board members scrambling to be present tonight so this could happen. So unless I hear an objection from planning board members, I'll take a motion to adjourn our participation in the public hearing.
Does anybody on the planning board want to address recommendations on the housing amendments?
Oh, yes, it actually would be great if someone wanted to give us an update on what your recommendations were, because I don't know if that's made it to the public yet fully. I didn't read the recorder if it was in there today.
I think it was.
Well, I believe that Eric had passed along that we had a particular suggestion regarding the by right. This is the most nuanced one. Recommendation with the by right within the semi residential district.
Thank
to
you all
come up
very
with.
much. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, George, can you just hold on 1 second? I'm just gonna let it clear up.
Get out?
Get out of here. No, you don't. Absolutely. It's supposed to be, so you can absolutely say thank you.
Run to the car.
I just, I'm gonna have because.
Don't worry about me coming. There's something happening at 7 o'clock that we don't know about. Maybe happy hour, it's over. Yes. Can I just ask, was there comment on the housing stuff? Or what did you guys do before?
Yeah.
That's what you call. Was the public or you guys?
It's the public.
Mitchell, people that attended our meeting. Oh, yeah, same. Okay, like that 24 number that Al put out, which.
Okay, George, if you want to keep going, we're good now.
Sure. Thank you. So the issue of the making multifamily by right in the semi-residential, we had endorsed, not with specifics, but a general idea of a compromise where up to a certain number of units could be by right, and above that would retain special permit. And the number we talked about was ranged from 6 to 10 units. And the idea is just something of scale, and that for a development that small size, the special permit processing expense could be an impediment, whereas for a larger project, it would be much less so. And so we had passed along that suggestion. I hope it was passed along to you, because that was the intention of the board, to have that reported to you from the planning board, and that we were looking for guidance from you about a number. Our understanding was that this wasn't coming up for a decision at this council meeting, though I'm not clear on that. We were a bit vague on some of the timing. So if that isn't the case, we were going to take what your deliberation yielded, if you agreed with that compromise position. And we're going to come back to that at our meeting on January 2nd.
So I'll just state for timing, my hope is that we will make a recommendation on these four changes this evening that will then go to council for the December meeting on these, only these. ADUs, just so you know, those are not on the agenda tonight, but I am holding ADUs until January. So you'll have a whole other month to deliberate on.
You guys know the guidelines came out yesterday?
Yeah, I got an email yesterday from the executive office.
So what we're waiting for is out.
It's here.
Yeah.
I didn't have time we would not have time to.
No, I just was making sure. Again, sorry for missing the beginning. I was
It's okay.
fixed up on time, so I just want to catch up.
We actually had someone from the board come out and make the recommendation of 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you heard that, George, but one of the actual public members came out and said they thought that up to 24 would be fine.
Wait, sorry, I'm
By
sorry.
right.
Process wise, I think before we can discuss this, I have to read the motion. So you guys I can invite you to stay for this meeting and I can read the motions and I'm happy to take comment from you, but just process wise, to follow Robert's rules, I do have to read the motions and open the discussion. And so if you want to stay, I will do that and welcome your input.
As long as you have our comments, I'm fine. You already have them from our meeting. You should have what we recommend.
Yeah, and I went to the meeting yesterday, so.
I think you hear me talk again. You want to sit and talk?
I'm here, I can stay.
No. All right.
Well, thanks for getting here.
You're welcome. No problem.
You guys
Okay,
did okay.
great. I
holiday.
then need to get us to.
Adjourn us though.
Do you want to adjourn, George?
Yes, I think that's fine. We can adjourn. I
Okay.
want to let Peter go. I know he's at an event and he's participating remotely here.
Okay, so you just have to get a motion to adjourn and roll
I
call
make a
vote.
motion that the planning board adjourn their participation in the joint meeting.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? And all board members in favor? We have to do roll call, I guess.
You
I
have
say
to roll
aye.
call, I'm sorry.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jeff? Aye.
Aye.
Victor?
Aye.
And Peter, are you there? Can you, yes.
Aye.
Thank you very much, Peter. Peter, thank you for attending under the circumstances. Appreciate it. All right. Adjourned.
Thank you.
Holiday.
Thank you. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you. And you're welcome to stay and I will take your input as a
person.
invited member of the planning board if you want to
Yes,
stay.
so I can speak
Yes,
as.
I will just absorb you into the EDC for the evening. Okay, so we are gonna start with the motion on 28. And I think I can take all of these together as one. No, we're gonna go one at a time. We're gonna go one at a time. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, section 200-12, semi-residential district SR by adding language in bold and by deleting language in strike through as follows in attached exhibit A, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. Okay, so this one is,
We need a second.
oh, I need a second, absolutely. This one is specific to 200-12. So all this one does, and correct me, Counselor Garrett, if I'm wrong, is strike multifamily dwelling in accordance with and
It adds a number on page 32,
it adds.
number 13, multifamily dwelling in accordance with 200-40 as by right is what the initial language was.
Okay. So do we have any discussion on this specific motion? Yes.
So the suggestion from the planning board I am very happy to take. I think it makes a lot of sense to keep the special permit, and I think we should go with the number that Al and Mitch and Joanne suggested, because it's frankly a very reasonable compromise.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm kind of thrilled. This is where we ended up, with people making a suggestion and us being able to kind of hear the neighborhood's concerns and address them. And honestly, I think it's a good model for any future changes to have these kind of thresholds. You know, having a project that's bigger, it makes a lot of sense to take a bigger look. So I, yeah, am blown away. This is where we ended up, and I'm honestly kind of happy about it. So I think just figuring out the exact language is going to be the only challenge here, as far as how to do that. Let's see. So right now it reads in the language on 32, multifamily dwelling in accordance with 20-40. We could probably just add for buildings with less than 24 units, and then keep it the same otherwise without striking subsection C9. And if we do that, okay, so let me just write this down if you give me a second. Actually, no, it's pretty simple. So what we could, can I make a motion to?
Make a motion to amend, and I will, someone else has to second.
Okay, so motion to amend, subsection B, number 13, adding the words multi-family dwelling in accordance with 20-40, 24 units and under.
Sorry, it was 2040,
Yeah, 200-40.
200-40.
Yeah.
And it was 24 units
And under.
and under.
And so that's an addition to the by right section. And then in addition, adding to subsection C9, the phrase after the numbers 200-40, 25 units and above. And so that is in accordance with what the citizens, suggested.
Yeah.
And it would basically would make it so it's a special permit for 25 and above, and by right 24 and below.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend and a second. Is there discussion on this specific motion?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea because it brings a compromise. There's been a lot of discussion from the public and a lot of concern. I think this welds that with this push to get more housing in Greenfield without breaking down the public process and people's engagement. So I think this is good. I agree with the number, and I think it sounds reasonable.
Great. If there is no other discussion, we can take a vote. We have to do.
10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Do I have to wait for you guys to go first?
No, you can go.
So that a few days ago, one of my homework items was to try to talk to some people, developers, to understand what the right threshold could be. Because what you don't want is for a special permit to mean that, to become a burden such that we can't get the type of housing we want. I got an echo.
Yeah, do you want to mute George, I think?
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. He's muted.
So the question, we left it kind of open in our meeting when we threw out some random numbers, and I felt we just struck down another ordinance that had some arbitrary numbers in it. Let's not add some arbitrary numbers to this one. Let's talk to people and know what they're talking about. So I spoke to some developers, and I would say that, they also there's no firm, obvious number. What we don't want is to have a special permit to do a two-family house such that you could ever do one, because the extra burden, it's not for one thing, in Greenfield, a special permit is not an extraordinary burden. But it does make it take longer. You have to do more, you probably have to do more drawings. There's just more process, and that makes more process. So you can amortize that over a bigger project, a lot easier than over a smaller project. So 24, based on my conversations, wouldn't compromise the feasibility of a reasonable project. So I would support that number.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
I will say something.
Yeah.
Like the semi-residential district is also like a very small district in Greenfield. There's might consist of 10 streets, so it's not like we're doing this. It just makes sense. It's surrounded by regular residential everywhere else. So I'm okay with 24.
Great. I feel great about it too. I was prepared to come in and say 30, so 24 I'm happy with. Any other comments? Great. All in favor of the amended sections of order number 25-024? Counselor Garrett?
Aye.
Counselor Healy?
Aye.
Counselor Minhas?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and we will move on to the next one.
Marianne, I'm sorry to, don't we have to vote on the amended piece now? Because
We voted on the amended piece, so do we have to go back to the
thought
original?
we did. Isn't that how? If I'm wrong.
I don't know if you're wrong. I just don't know. This is why I'm like, I need a parliamentarian.
Because I think we went into the weeds of amending it and we agreed on the amendment.
So
So would we go in and vote down the original?
No, it's not.
but you have, now that we
Oh, it's now-
approved the
okay.
amendment, we gotta vote on them.
Okay, so now we're gonna vote on FY 25-2024 because we have to,
As amended.
as amended. Counselor Garrett?
Aye.
Counselor Healy?
Aye.
Counselor Minhas?
Yes.
Okay, now amended version. Okay. We are going to go to FY 25-024.1. The City Council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, section 200-40, multifamily dwellings, subsection B, procedure by striking through paragraph 4 in its entirety as follows in Exhibit A, and further amends the table of contents in the index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the City of Greenfield. Okay. This one,
So moved.
someone has to second.
Second.
Thank you. I will take discussion on this one. If there is any.
Do folks have any questions about this? I know this has been talked about a bunch.
So didn't we just amend this in the last one because you amended the 200-4 that same part?
I think it's the same.
It's the same section that
Yes.
talks about.
Different number. Yeah.
Yeah, that talks about what the definition of a multifamily dwelling.
Right. Yeah.
Right, so this one is, right, it's amend section 200-40, multifamily dwellings of the zoning ordinance by striking subsection B4 in its entirety, which says more than one building may be placed on one lot, but no structure may contain more than 24,
The 50 was the original change.
right, 24 dwelling units, and no more than 6 or 10 was the original. Unit shall be served by a single primary entrance. Each structure will be separated by a minimum of 40 feet. The zoning board of appeals may allow more than 24 dwellings per building in existing structures being converted to multifamily units. So this is being struck. That's it. There's no additions here.
Correct.
Any discussion?
I guess I'm a little confused because if we strike that, are we striking the fact that we don't need a special permit after
No.
24?
So if
And I know you talked about that, but from a legal perspective, is it worth at least having somebody look at that? Because a builder might be able to come in and say, well, it's contradictory and I'm going to use it in my favor and let the court decide.
So I think I can address that. So what this does, if we got rid of this section, it would still, if we adopt that other amendment in the semi-residential zone and only the semi-residential zone, you'd have the special permit at 25 and above. In the rest of the city, any multifamily would have a special permit. And in the central commercial, it's by right. And so there's no change there.
So, because I haven't dove into the zoning that much, so the other like urban residential already has
Special permit.
special permit for multifamily dwellings, and we're not changing that at all.
So it's going to continue to be a special permit in the whole city, except for the central commercial, which is already by right. And if we adopt the change that we just voted on in the semi-residential, 24 units and below, but again, 25 would remain special permit. Perfect. So this ultimately allows more density, and these are this is kind of an arbitrary number, the 24 per building. And so if this is honestly the most important of the zoning amendments here. This will make a bigger difference for projects. I know, for example, the old Bart's plant that Al wrote about, like that, they talked about having that be 30 units or so. That would literally be impossible without getting rid of this section. And it's such a good spot for it that that's the spot where it makes the most sense. Building up in the center of the city, this is what lets that happen. If you look at it, it mentions, 40-foot setbacks, which is really inappropriate for downtown. In the rural residential district or something, that makes sense. But this does not alter the dimensional table. So in the rural residential area, for example, you would have to have bigger setbacks, you'd have to have more frontage, the height restriction remains in place. So there's all these things that, triangulate to determine the size of the building that aren't, strictly speaking, just an arbitrary number, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And so I think this is really, really important because then it allows us to have a conversation, kind of like we just did, about what do we want each of our districts to look like without this, frankly, straitjacket. And so that's kind of my argument about this. Do you guys have any other questions about it or
No,
concerns? or
I'm
anything?
good on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't
I
change.
have a question here.
Yeah.
So what we're striking out, is it particular to a specific zone?
No, it's
Or this
any,
is just in general, it takes away the 40-foot in between space in all zones?
yes, but
It takes
say in
away
the,
that requirement.
it does, but if there's a requirement for, say, rural residential to have bigger setbacks, that would apply to multifamily there. So I don't have it off the top of my head, Councilman Minhas, but whatever the rural residential, the suburban residential districts have for their open space and setback requirements, that would apply to multifamily there. So in one of those areas, you would have to have them further apart than you would in the urban residential district or the central commercial, if that makes sense. It's rationalizing in some ways the way we do multifamily zoning. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Okay.
It's taking away the blanket, right? Like it's taking away the blanket that says that in
For
certain,
okay.
yeah, it's,
But there's specifications for each specific different zone on its own.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
George, did you have something or is that just how you're sitting?
No, I just wanted to check, since we're here, if you hadn't heard already, did you want to know what the planning board recommendation was on this?
Oh, I'd be happy to hear the planning board's recommendation.
The planning board is sending forward a positive recommendation on this, 3 yeses and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion on this one?
I would just say that what we talked about is, and John, to your point, it's not typical that you have a cap like this kind of floating out there on its own in a zoning code. There's all sorts of other rules that limit the density, the height, the massing, the setbacks, the building separation, and you can let those do their job. I mean, so a 40-foot building separation, 24 units per building, 6 units per entrance, whatever. That's just, what that gets you is a sprawl style garden apartment building, and there's no way around that. And if someone wanted to build that in the suburbs, that's one thing, but that's not what we need downtown. So it just makes sense to take it out. And I've, in my experience, talked to in this town, the building department, the fire department. There are plenty of much more
Point of order.
informed.
There's 2 members of the planning board. Their planning board has adjourned. Are they speaking as public members?
They're invited guests, Stephanie. I invited
It's not
them.
on the agenda. I'm sorry, I didn't. If we're going to open up the public comment, I'd be happy to speak on this as well.
We
But-
did have public comment, but
I
didn't-
understand that,
As
Miriam,
the
but
chair, I'm allowed to invite guests, and so I've invited them.
that's not on the
today.
agenda.
Well, we can discuss it later, but I have invited them to speak on behalf of the planning board regarding these, which is a common practice. Okay.
All I'll say is that taking these rules away doesn't compromise life safety, firefighter access, building codes, all those things. The firefighter would look at everything, building code would look at everything. So it doesn't open up opportunities to do things that aren't responsible or safe or otherwise.
Yeah. You still have fire separation requirements,
Exactly.
et cetera, for the building code. And I think there's another logic floating around the community from what I've heard from people, and the concerns is like not like a big subsidized housing authority coming in. And just to clarify that for the public, if they're wondering how that works, Chapter 40B in the Mass General Law is very clear about that. And they could basically bypass the planning board anyways with an appeal. So this wouldn't even change that for them either. So that concern should just go right out the window, because the developer could go and say, hey, you have to let me put this in. It's the law.
Okay, so any other discussion on FY 25-024.1? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as it reads, Counselor Garrett?
Aye.
Counselor Healy?
Aye.
Counselor Minhas?
I'm gonna abstain on it.
Okay. I am a yes on this one. 25-024.1. Okay. And we have two more to go. FY 25-024.2, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, section 200-48, mixed residential business uses by striking subsection A in its entirety and replacing with language in bold as follows in attached exhibit A. And further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that the non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield.
So moved.
We need a second.
Second.
Thank you. So this one, in section 200-48 mixed residential business uses of the zoning ordinance to allow first floor dwellings and mixed-use lots by amending subsection A so that it reads as follows. Striking, all dwelling units shall be above the first floor level, the street level, which faces the street with the highest traffic use, and adding, first floor dwelling units shall not be allowed along the street side with the highest traffic use. So this is allowing for first floor dwelling units, but it's taking into account that the highest traffic use side of the building will not be used. So that means like if there's something, a business or, on Main Street, one of those businesses on Main Street could not become, an apartment, built an apartment on that first floor. We did get recommendations, I will say, from Disability Access, and we had many public comments and a handful of emails that I received that were supporting this in terms of increasing housing stock specific for folks that have mobility impairment. So I'm in favor of this one as it stands.
I've just a concern that I've heard from a couple of different people is about the potential loss of commercial real estate, which is, I think, the reason for having access be on the non-highest traffic use side. But I also think it's important to note that in the central commercial district, you can already, by right, this is in the current zoning, change commercial real estate into residential. And that is happening downtown. I just found out at the Housing Greenfield meeting last night that the spot where the NOM's, daycare is.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to become fully residential building. They're going to be putting, new stories on the top, Rural Development Inc., and the whole thing is going to be residential. So what this would do.
But not the bottom floor that faces the street.
The bottom floor will be as well, which it's going to be a community room and like a laundry room. That's what they're planning.
So the street facing will not be units.
Correct, but it will
Okay.
be. And so, I am also concerned about the loss of commercial real estate, but this would help preserve it in the sense of giving somebody an incentive in addition to all the handicap accessibility stuff, which I think is really important to do, to keep it mixed use.
Right.
So right now it's an all or nothing. It's either commercial on the first floor, residential up top, or all residential. What this would allow people to do is do something in between, which is some commercial, some residential, rather than just potentially getting rid of all the commercial. Obviously, the worst case scenario. So that is I only found this out yesterday, and so that I hope will address those concerns, because again, I share the desire to have a vibrant commercial downtown.
So has that been approved?
I don't know. I
Zoning
don't.
Board of Appeals, planning.
That's a great
Because
question.
That would, maybe it's just I'm talking, because to me, I've worked in Northampton quite a bit, and in mixed use, first floor is commercial, it remains commercial. It's not allowed to be amenities for apartments.
Yeah.
I'm against this for many reasons. One, I think Greenfield struggles economically as it is, and I think the right avenue to do here is to start questioning why our economic development member who has a full-time job here isn't finding local businesses to move to Main Street. I also believe that in a mixed-use building, when those are built, typically the first floor is made out of steel for certain reasons to protect people who live above. And I also feel like if we take the first floor away and you give developers the option to say, hey, there's nothing saying I can't just leave a 10 by 100 galleyway in the front and do some storefronts there that have like a little tiny shop in it, and then build houses out back. I know that we need housing in Greenfield, and I think it's important that we get housing, but I also think we need to have livable wages in Greenfield and jobs and opportunities to work somewhere. And by doing this, you open up the window to get rid of those opportunities for people that do want to invest in Greenfield. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, Greenfield's, they've been commercial for so long and nobody's in there. Like, wow, why does it matter? Well, it doesn't matter. People aren't in there because we're not doing our job as a city to attract people to come there, right? So this is a tough one. I'm going to vote no on this. I just think if you look at Northampton, you look at a lot of areas that have this mixed use, first floor is commercial for a reason, and it's to have businesses on the storefronts.
So can I ask you a question?
Can I
So,
say something?
oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Councilman Haas.
I was gonna say I agree with Derek on this. I'm opposed to this. I think it's just as important to find housing for people. While we're doing that, it's just as important to see where are these people going to shop, where are these people going to work. You need to view this holistically, and also keep in mind that a local economy needs those storefronts, needs accessibility for an aging population to be able to pop in and out of stores. And I agree with Derek that the fact that there's a bunch of empty storefronts out doesn't mean that, hey, let's just get rid of them and throw in people there. That just means the city's doing a bad job of attracting business. Now, there was some report or something that came out that said we have 400 or something new businesses in Greenfield. I don't know how true that is or where that comes from. But how about let's ask some of those 400 businesses, hey, what can we do as a city to put you in and fill those spots so that people can have livable, quality jobs at a local business, or that they can go and shop there? I don't think the point is, hey, all right, it's empty, let's just fill it up with people now. How are those people going to provide for themselves? It doesn't make sense. I think once you go, and for a developer standpoint, I think it would be a wonderful idea because, whereas you have an empty place and local economies struggle, local businesses struggle, if you just have people in there that's rental income is guaranteed, that's very easy. But I think for a uh, local economy and a small town like Greenfield, I think it's very important that we center our local business and try to incentivize it and not open the doors so that there isn't another uh, impediment and another source of competition for local business here.
Thank you, Counselor.
John, can I ask you, clarifying question, because when I look at the table of uses, multifamily dwelling is allowed by right in central commercial.
Right.
So the building that you're talking about on Main Street, that's not a mixed use building, it's a residential building.
It was mixed use and they're going to turn it into multifamily.
But not mixed, they're not going to turn it into mixed use.
No,
So
it was, original intention was to keep it mixed use, and then they decided that it wasn't financially feasible for them to keep it mixed use. And so they decided to make it multifamily,
Wouldn't they need a special permit to do that under current conditions or no?
not in the central commercial district. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think these concerns that you guys have brought forward are really legitimate.
Yeah.
So I totally agree that we don't want to throw the commercial baby out with the bathwater. And so, the critique is fair,
Yeah.
but this would allow that halfway in between. This would, so that's my best argument, I think, to address those concerns.
Yeah.
Is because otherwise it's all or nothing.
Yeah, if you require, you're more likely to not get any commercial space if you require the entire first floor to be commercial or none of the first floor to be commercial. Developers don't want to build very much retail. So I've seen what you're talking about in communities where if you require that people build retail on ground floors, but you don't specify that it be leasable or usable, you'll get that sliver of space that no one can ever use. It's going to be empty forever and nobody gets anything that they want. So one thing to consider is we're not requiring commercial on the ground floor in the central business district, I don't think.
Right.
And that's what you guys are trying to protect, but this is actually working against that. So maybe we should consider requiring commercial on the ground floor in certain areas. But if we do that, we need to make sure that it leads to space that's leasable and realistic and doesn't work against itself in a different way. If you require space that ends up being too big, developers won't lease it. What we've seen in other communities is, like in Lynn, for example, the developers are required to build some retail space. It's cheaper to just build a white box that's giant, take the whole building, make it one giant space, and just cross your fingers that CVS is going to come. And in the meantime, nobody comes. And so the mom and pops can't move into that space because it hasn't been demised into spaces that are small enough for them to be able to afford. So this is an issue people have been trying to figure out for a long time. There are a lot of ways to work against it if you're a developer. But I'm also a downtown advocate and don't want to see there be no retail downtown. I just want to make sure we're clear on what exactly this rule will be doing. So
Can I just go to George because he's had his hand up for a while and I'd appreciate the perspective.
And I first want to be clear, I'm not trying to be an active part of your committee's deliberation. I just wanted to check if you wanted to know what was the outcome of the planning board deliberation as far as the vote on this item. And it was at the November meeting, it was a unanimous positive recommendation. And with that, I will take my leave and get to the second half of my chorus rehearsal. So,
Thank you.
So I
All
just
right,
want to
take care.
circle back to that conversation. So circling back, so there's nothing in the zoning ordinance now that's saying that those buildings on Main Street are commercial.
It doesn't have to be commercial. You mean. Like, so we're talking about a new building. You built something new, right?
No, I'm talking about existing building. So the existing buildings on Main Street are considered mixed use.
Some are considered.
If they were considered that when they were built, right? If we have a building that was built, it's grandfathered in under whatever zoning, like however it existed when it was built, correct?
Well, so you're talking about the use is different. The use is something that the building department regulates. And the zoning is.
But you would have to file for a change of use.
Correct.
If you were going to go.
Yeah, and good point. Yeah, exactly. Now, if you tear the building down and replace it, that might be different. I mean, these are nuanced questions that Eric and Mark Snow probably need to weigh in on, but these, they're the right kind of questions to ask for sure.
Yeah, so because the way Northampton does it is very different because they define in a zoning area within Northampton that is like a office. It's like an office residential district, I think OI district. And in there, it's saying first floor required commercial, any floor above that could be residential. I think that that's something we should look at as planning and zoning, and the EDC is saying, maybe we need to relook at how we define that whole district, because the way I'd hate to see everything go to the building department and say, hey, this is a change in use. See you later, and then all we have is houses on Main Street. And I just don't think you look at any thriving downtown community and there is commercial on the first floor and apartments on the second floor.
Yeah.
You look at Springfield, you look at Chicopee, you look at. Go ahead, Councilor Minas. Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
no, I just wanted to agree with that. I mean, you go to any city, it's that if you want a vibrant downtown, if you want an actual bustling community that people can go in and out of shops with, they're not filled with housing on Main Street. I mean, the rest, can I put up a random store on any other street? No, I can't, because those are residential, right? And we have this one small strip, this one small street called Main Street, and that's strictly for our commercial. That's where people come in. There's parking spaces specifically for that are designed so that people can go in and out. You know, there's a whole community of those, and they're struggling right now. And I just feel like right now this would be like, you know, kicking the man while he's down type of situation. I don't support that.
One other just nuance to this, the geometry of the building that we're talking about on Main Street it's kind of deep off of Main Street. So there's a frontage along Main Street, but then the parcel continues back towards the railroad tracks. And what you would want to be able to do in a situation like that is do residential to the ground floor back behind the building on the side street, but do commercial on the ground floor on Main Street. That would make the project more feasible. I don't know about that one specifically because I know it sounds like they've already got it figured out, but like a situation like that is what I'm talking about, where the geometry makes it so you can have retail up front in a reasonable dimension, but if the lot's 200 feet long, you're never going to have a 200-foot long retail space. It starts to not make sense at that point. Does that make sense as a distinction?
Yeah, go ahead, Nuri.
So again, I just want to mention the reason for this proposed amendment is the accessibility of a first floor unit. I fully hear what both of you guys are saying, and I agree with you about the need and desire to have commercial real estate. So I'm wondering if we could make an amendment to it that may do some of that preservation, like 50% of the first floor must be commercial, you know? I would be very comfortable with that. I don't know
Yeah.
how you folks feel about that.
I am comfortable with an amendment, but what I worry about is that we can't make any amendments that are considered like substantive changes. And so
I mean,
this is actually something where I came in being like, you know, like no big deal. Like this seems, you know, like, yes, I heard the accessibility piece of the necessariness of this. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, this actually needs thoughtful, you know, potential full-time employee of the city to say, looking at our specific zoning areas in commercial and saying like, I'm interested in knowing, okay, if we look at Main Street and Federal Street, what are the usages of the current buildings, including the buildings that are up for sale right now? You know, like how are those designated? And so like, what is the sort of potential and what do we want to see in terms of long-term planning in our commercial downtown? So I don't necessarily feel like we could come up with an amendment tonight that would not be a substantive change and be thoughtfully produce what the intent is of accessibility and maintaining a Main Street commercial business area that is how we see the future of Greenfield. So I would recommend that we table this, and that will allow us to figure out if a thoughtful amendment is safe enough to move forward, or strike this down at another date and then come back with a new version. It's more thoughtful.
I think that sounds fine to me. I think pursuing the avenue of trying to see if we can change this one.
Yep.
For January is my appeal, so.
That sounds great.
And then, you know, and both Councilor Minhas and, you know, Healy, if you guys have ideas, I really would welcome them. You know, so I think if we can get both, that would be ideal. You know, somebody at the Housing Greenfield meeting last night mentioned the idea like, well, what's to keep somebody, instead of it being accessible, from owning a business living in the back? And there would be nothing, which I actually don't think is a bad thing. You know, as far as, you know, economic development in downtown, it's kind of going back to the old cottage industry idea. You know, a bakery or something, you have your, you know, thing in the front. Sorry.
So yeah, so that is actually a big moving trend right now in development, and it's a work live.
Yep.
So people work on the first floor,
Yep.
and then they rent the apartments above on the second and third floor, so they walk right down to work. And there's a lot of businesses that are looking to do that in cities like Greenfield. It's just how do we attract them, right? So you might have a small startup tech firm that comes in and wants to rent the first floor, and then they refinish the second and third floor into apartments, and then the people that work there. Because honestly, when you get into that level of work and you're like really into, I won't go out too far off the sidebar here because it's getting late, but when you're like a computer programmer, those people are working 14, 18 hours a day. You know, they like to have the amenity of going right upstairs, eating something, coming back, because they grind, they're into it, right? And I think we need to look at, like Councilor Bullock said, we need to look at the big picture and say, how can Greenfield as a city approach this matter and say, what's the best thing from Greenfield? What is our goal for downtown? What are we trying to attract? And maybe we need to, instead of saying, hey, we need a lot of just shops, hey, let's try to attract some of these work to live businesses and get businesses in here that do something, whether it's computer programming or whatever it may be. And so I think this is being rushed, and I agree with the recommendation to either table or squash this. My preference would be, I think it's going to be a major change, and it's going to end up getting squashed anyways. So I'm just going to vote no against this, or vote no to table, or yes to table it, whatever.
I would make a motion to table.
I would second that.
All in favor, Counselor Garrett,
Aye.
Counselor Healy,
Aye.
Counselor Minhas. Sorry, did you have
Yes.
one more thing, Counselor?
Yeah.
Wait, started a vote. Do you need to say it?
I can say it afterwards. That's fine.
Okay, your vote? Are you a
Yes.
yes to table? Okay, great. Go ahead, say what you'd like to say.
I think two things. One, practicality wise, as someone who is involved in business on Main Street, a lot of the back entrances and the back doors are actually used for delivery. So that's a huge thing. That's a practicality issue. Second, I think accessibility is definitely something we should consider, but not only in terms of housing. I mean, people have to eat, people have to shop, people have to, they have to live, right? And if there's not enough shops that are on the first floor for people to access, for a number of reasons, whether it's because they're of elder age or because of any ability issues, that I think is also an issue. I mean, you can't just, where would the shops go? I mean, if there's shops upstairs or in places that are not accessible, that are away from your commercial district there, how are people going to get there? Is it going to be feasible for them? I think that's also a concern. But yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move us to our final motion for tonight, order number FY 25-025. The city council move that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, section 200-14 by adding language in bold and by deleting language in strike through as follows in attached exhibit A, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. This one amends section 200-14 Central Commercial District of the zoning ordinance to allow medical centers, clinics, including accessory research, by right instead of by special permit by adding the following new number under subsection B. So it changes it to number 25 in section B, and striking subsection C7 and renumbering the remaining items, which the remaining items are numbers that are uses that are permitted by special permit only. I'm gonna say I'm mixed on this one. I'm honestly I was really surprised to read how many uses within central commercial would require a special permit. That was surprising to me. And I couldn't really follow the thread of like what or why make something by special permit versus by right in terms of like business. It didn't seem to, they're just, and yeah. And I just also want to say that this does say So this does say though, if you're in central commercial, single family dwelling and 2-family dwelling is special permit, bed and breakfast. Anyways, I'm really mixed on this one. I'm open to having my mind changed.
So moved, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Sorry. I went right into it.
That's okay. I'm sorry, if somebody's got a second.
Oh, yeah.
Second. So at the planning board meeting last night, and Jeff would speak to this, they didn't get to talk about this, so I'm really inclined to table this until January, until we've heard from them. Because I don't really have a strong opinion about this. This was Eric. And I know there's definitely mixed feelings, so more information, in my opinion, would be better.
Okay.
So I don't know.
In our meeting, the question to Eric was, what are the implications of requiring a retroactive special permit application by the people that would be impacted by this? I mean, is it a baby with the bathwater type situation where there's bigger users? That's one thing, but the smaller chiropractors and dentists, would they have to get a special permit too to do what they're doing? And would that mean they no longer can do what they want to do? And is that really what we're trying to accomplish here? So I think getting a little more nuance from them on what specifically are we targeting here? What would the implications be for the businesses that are already in downtown?
Yeah. I'm against this one, and I'll say why. I think the special permit process is not that burdensome. I've done it before. I think facilities in that district, I think we want to know what you're putting in, and we want to know what the use is. And if it's a small dentist firm, that's a no-brainer, right? But if we're talking about putting in, 50 unit, treatment center on Main Street, I'm sorry, it's just not a good place for it, right? And I'm not trying to, trust me, addiction is a big part of my life and a lot of friends. So I'm not trying to stigmatize that. All I'm saying is that it just doesn't fit in the area, and we want to know what's going in down there. I think we open the can of worms here if we just say, yeah, come on in, medical, just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, what my inclination was on this was that like our central commercial district is so small, and it does include streets that have largely residential homes on them. And so like if someone like Bay State wanted to put a satellite clinic, and I agree, I don't know what the difference is between like a clinic and an office, like, and that's not delineated in the special permit uses. Like it doesn't say like a single physician's, office or whatever, which I think is different than how I envision what a clinic is. I envision like 48 Sanderson Street. And if that wanted to move in to like over here on Pleasant Street or any of these like smaller streets down, I do think like a special permit isn't a huge burden for something that I'm envisioning this being something large. So, and second, I just would rather not move this forward without a planning board recommendation. I don't know how other counselors would feel about that anyways, if we brought this to a vote without a planning board recommendation. So I'm happy to table this one too, and send it back and move it forward next month when we have the recommendation. So I'll make a
I'd
motion.
like to say something before.
Oh, yeah. Counselor Minhas, I'm sorry that
Thanks.
I'm not looking that way. Go
No
ahead.
worries. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I agree with Derek again on this one. I don't know. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like this has anything to do with housing or trying to make our commercial district more appealing or shop friendly or pro business. I mean, I'm opposed to buy right stuff in general, but especially just my interactions with a lot of agencies in Greenfield that are posing as medical facilities, that pose like they pretend to give medical facility, hold medical operations, and I don't agree with this. I don't think this should go through, and so I'm in favor of tabling.
Great. So I will make a motion to table.
Second.
And all in favor, Counselor Garrett,
Aye.
Counselor Healy,
Aye.
Counselor Minhas.
Yeah.
Okay. Table. Okay. And so those are our motions. We had discussions. Our next, is there any old business? New business? Next meeting will be January 14th, 2025 at 6 PM at City Hall Meeting Room 2, second floor, Zoom and hybrid unless otherwise posted. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what the process would be, but like I don't know. We are the Economic Development Committee. Can we like ask the town like what are those 400 new businesses? Where are they coming from? I'm just very interested by that.
I am
And
yeah.
how do we get them into a brick and mortar? Like if they're real, let's have a bustling Main Street. I'd like to see that.
What I would suggest, Counselor Minhas, is that I would be happy to support that conversation at next month's EDC meeting. And so if you wanted to email the assessor's office and ask them to provide a list and potentially come to our meeting, and we could invite those businesses to come to our meeting. And I just think it would be useful to learn more about, I think it was 200, but either way, it's a lot. It was a large number. And so if you wanna get that ball rolling, I'm happy to support that being on next month's agenda.
Okay.
Well, can we add maybe having the EDC director come and talk about what she's doing in Greenfield too?
Super
It could be
happy.
February.
Yeah, happy to invite her as well. Yeah, I will gladly put that on next month's agenda. Okay, so now I will take a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor, Counselor Garrett, Counselor Healy,
Aye.
Counselor Minhas.
Yes.
Okay, and I am as well. Adjourn. Okay. This meeting is closed at 7:47 PM.